We all know someone who is instantly likable. People just love being in their company and will never have anything bad to say about them. And this not only helps them with their social circle, but it helps them to thrive in almost every area of their life. Now tell me, who wouldn't want to be that type of person? But most of the advice out there these days is about loving yourself, and if people don't accept you for it, screw them. But I feel like that advice just misses part of the bigger picture, because we treat our likability as if it's just a matter of fact.
That's okay, girls tend not to like me.
But I've been thinking a lot about what makes someone likable, and here's what I've realized. Likability isn't an innate quality about us. It's more of a skill or a habit. So it's almost like you wanting to be more productive, so you wake up earlier. That doesn't mean that you don't love yourself. It just means that you see a better way of doing things that will unlock more of life for you. And this isn't any different. You can still love yourself while still wanting to be more likable. But obviously there is a danger with this type of advice. You can try to be so likable that you become a people pleaser. And I've been there and I've done that, and I can tell you now that being a people pleaser is way worse than being unlikable. So that's why I want to share 2 thoughts and observations that I've made about likable people and how you can become more likable without stepping into that territory of being a people pleaser. So if you want to be likable, you actually have to like people. So usually when you think of a people person, you think of someone who's really bubbly and extroverted. But in reality, a people person is just someone who values and actually cares about other people. So if you think the world is against you, or you've been hurt so much by other people that you think everyone sucks, then of course you're not going to give off good energy and people won't like you back. And it probably means the reason that you're watching this video is because you're lonely and you want more people in your life to socialize with. But again, you've kind of just made everything about you. And this is the thing, if we want to be people, if you want to be a people person, you kind of have to focus your energy outwards instead of inwards and have more of a giving nature. So this means showing a genuine interest in other people. So if you don't really care about what someone else has to say, why bother? Instead, you really need to have this mindset that everyone has value. And that means that you'll be more open and curious when you're around someone. And I feel like sometimes this is actually a really hard thing to do, and it's definitely something that I've struggled with because I feel like it's so easy to form thoughts and opinions and be kind of judgmental. Like for me, I've always felt this need to prove myself right around other people, and that is not the most likable trait. People want to be seen and heard, and when you're trying to bulldoze your opinions and thoughts onto other people, they're never going to feel that way. I mean, at the end of the day, people will actually forget about what you say. In the end, they only remember how you made them feel. I mean, we all know that person who makes everything about them.
Both of you, look at me. Look how young I look.
They're always complaining and moaning, and even when you give them advice, they still complain and they never ask about you. And let me ask you something, do you like that person? Probably not. And then the second trait of likable people is they're actually very human. This has become more rare because we're always picking up our phone whenever we get bored, and we're walking around looking down at our phone instead of looking up at people. It's something none of us like about each other, but we're all doing it. And body language is such a huge factor in likability. But here's the problem. If you're quite shy or reserved, or you're quite nervous about making friends, then your body language is going to show that you're quite closed off, if not a little bit snobby. And I know that's not intentional, but you have to remember that the other person isn't a mind reader. They don't know that you're open to connection, so they have to pick up on your cues. The other thing that often happens is you try to be perfect, and this is definitely something that I'm guilty of. I really wanted to make friends, so I thought that I had to be my best self. But actually what happens is the opposite. When people think that you're perfect, they're less likely to trust you and they don't feel vulnerable or relaxed around you. And that's why I've added this clip into this video. It's called the pratfall effect. Mistakes can make us seem more likable if we're seen as competent. And I think Jennifer Lawrence is the perfect example of this. Even though she's really talented and really beautiful and she's won loads of awards, she's still really likable because we've seen her fall over at red carpet events and she doesn't take herself too seriously in interviews. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for us to wear our heart on our sleeves. I feel like it's become so common to think that you have to play it cool so that you're not trying too hard. But actually, I think the opposite happens. You try too hard when you're trying to play it cool. Now, I don't mean that you should go up to people and say, I want to be your friend, because that's not natural and that's not real. But if you had a good time with someone, tell them that. They'll probably really appreciate it. So it's quite simple. To be more likable, you have to be a people person and more human. But you could follow all of this advice and still nothing changes. And if that's the case for you, I bet one of two things are happening. You're either too focused on yourself, so you're overthinking everything and trying really hard to be interesting or curious or entertaining, that you're not actually present with that person. Or you're too focused on the other person, so you're overanalyzing their body language or trying really hard to listen to them so you can think about what you can say next. And if you're doing these things, it doesn't really sound like you're having a good time. And if you're not having a good time, do you really think the other person is having a good time? Probably not. So why are you doing these things? Why can't you just be natural around people? Well, it sounds to me like you're insecure and you don't like yourself. I mean, how can you be a natural around people if you don't even like yourself in your natural state? If you don't like yourself, you'll always be seeking the approval and validation of others because you can't give yourself that. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier in this video about focusing outwards instead of inwards. You won't be able to do that because you're not happy with the inwards. So you'll have a conversation with someone, and even though you know you should be curious about them, in the back of your mind you'll be thinking about whether they think you're interesting enough. And in the end, I feel like you'll just become a people pleaser because you won't be able to set boundaries and you'll always put other people on a pedestal. So even if people do like you, it will often be because you're a doormat or because you've become their free therapist. A likable person knows that they don't need to be liked by everyone. So they set boundaries and know what they're willing to tolerate because they respect themselves. But if you don't like yourself, you won't do that. Like I said at the start of this video, you can love yourself and still want to be likable. But if you just want to be likable, you will become a people pleaser. And if this is something that you are struggling with, check out my video on why you're not getting what you want in life. Because I used to be exactly the same. I was trying so hard and I was desperate to be liked. And trust me, it didn't work.